reminding you on President's Day that he called for most of these changes in his book, President Me, 10 years ago. Adam Carolla.
Yeah, get it on. Got to get it on. There it is. Yeah. Dawson's not here today, and Byron's not here today, so we're a little, and we got a light go out, so it's a little catch-as-catch-can around here today. Drake Bell has joined me in studio. Drake, I did not know how popular you were with the music, but we'll get into that. Drake and Josh, of course, is where we know you from. Lots of acting roles, lots of Nickelodeon stuff, probably blessing and a curse, Nickelodeon.
It's a good way of putting it. Yeah. I mean, definitely. I mean, it's been amazing for my career and showcasing my music. You know, I got to write all the music for the show back in the day, and so it's really nice to be able to go out and tour and playing music that people are familiar with from the show, and getting to not having people hand me songs and tell me what to play on the show. And so it was a cool creative outlet, and and obviously with a lot of the stuff that's kind of been uncovered in the past year or so, yeah, I guess that would be kind of the curse side of things.
Well, we'll get into the doc at some point, but we'll stick to the happy notes.
Yeah.
For now, at least we'll get out of the gate that way.
What are you drinking?
Oh, sorry, I'm drinking something with some green stuff and some stuff. I don't know.
Is that good for you?
It better be, because it tastes like shit. If it tastes like shit, it should be good for you. Yeah. We may have to adjust the clock up there, which I'm looking at now. All right. So I was talking to someone here about just how popular your music was in Mexico, and also trying to kind of figure out how things worked, because certain bands and certain artists are big here. Some are big everywhere. Some are big here and not as big there.
Yeah, it's a wild thing. I was watching an interview with Tina Turner years ago on Larry King, and Larry was blown away that she didn't live in the United States and that she was living in Europe and touring in Europe. And she's like, well, that's where my fans are. I'm bigger than the Rolling Stones in some places. I'm bigger than Madonna in Europe, but not here in the States. And he's like, but you're a legend. And it's interesting. I have friends of mine who you have no idea who they are, but then they go to Japan and pack a stadium the size of like the Crypt, and
right.
And some things just hit. And back in 2006, I released my second album, and we were touring here in the States and doing well. And then they booked me some shows in Mexico City, Guadalajara, Monterrey, like a Mexico run, and didn't really tell me anything about it. Just kind of booked the shows, and we went out expecting kind of what we've been doing in the States, 1,000, 5,000, And we got out there, and the airport was like the Beatles showing up to New York. I mean, it was like we had no idea. People were chasing the cars. There were all of the interviews we were doing. People were all outside. I mean, it was like the Beatles. I mean, it was crazy, and I had no idea. And then we got to the venue, and I see the venue that we're playing, and I'm like, who are we opening for? I mean, it's
big venue.
It's huge. I mean, it's their Madison Square Garden. It's like 10,000, 15,000 seats. And we sold out 2 shows that first day, and then all of the shows were selling out. We were playing huge arena. And the album, I was doing an interview, and they had me do some radio liners. And they said, can you thank the fans for keeping your song at #1 and keeping your album at #1? And I'm looking at I'm like, wait, what? They're like, yeah, you have the #1 song in the country. I'm like, this is crazy. And so I just
in English, right?
Yeah, in English, yeah. Which is cool, because now that I've spent so much time down there and like really built this amazing fan base, and so now I do a bunch of songs in Spanish and release Latin music and do collabs with other Latin artists, and so yeah, it's opened up this whole world that it's like, you come back here and they ask you for your name at Starbucks, and then you go there and you can't walk around. It's wild.
Yeah, I don't. It's hard to figure out how it works, although for some reason Rio de Janeiro seems to be the place that goes the most nuts over the most artists.
Yeah, they love rock and roll down there, and that's the thing too, is there's still a huge affinity for Beatles and Queen, and that stuff plays everywhere when you're down there. So it's not just. And what's really cool about audiences outside of the United States is when they're your fan, they'll go along if you put out a polka album. They're like, okay, oh, interesting. Let's see what he's doing with this. But here it's kind of, well, what's the next cool thing? They're always is there the next album that comes out? It wasn't as good as their last album. It didn't have everyone's wanting to I don't know. There's everyone's too cool here. But outside the United States, I put out so many different types of music, and I put out a Rockabilly album one year. I worked with Brian Setzer from the Stray Cats, and I
like that guy.
He's my favorite guitar player of all time, and I got to work with him and I just wanted to make a Rockabilly record just for fun, and I was playing shows out there, and people, the fans were showing up like pinup girls and greasers and leather jackets and going with the whole vibe. And I'm like, they just go along with it. It's really cool.
So Rockabilly, which was something, and then it went away and then came back with the Stray Cats and a couple of maybe Fabulous Thunderbirds or some bands
and then we had
that.
The Blasters.
The Blasters.
They had that whole
right.
neo Rockabilly 80s thing, and then it kind of resurfaced back in the early 90s, when the big band resurgence came along. You
know who was a little bit rockabilly, but not rockabilly, but a little bit punk rockabilly was the band X.
I love X.
I love Once Over Twice. You like that song?
I love that band. I got to see them when I was younger at it used to be called the Galaxy in Orange County, and it was like Billy Zoom and Exene, and it was just then they had the Knitters. Did you ever listen to the Knitters?
Yes, the Knitters are what Exene and I don't know John Doe went on to do. But
they had that song Wrecking Ball, which is really great.
The thing, see, I had a chance to interview all these people back in the K-Rock days, and I would always be sad when I'd be like a big fan of X, and then Exene would come in and be a bitch the whole time, and then I like the Cowboy Junkies, and then the Cowboy Junkies would come in and they'd be assholes, and I'd be like, oh, I always liked those guys. But then there were always the fun bands, the Boss Tones and Sugar Ray, the good dudes, like the good hang dudes, the Offspring and stuff like that, where everyone had a sense of humor and everyone was fun. And
what a great
hang
era
out with
of
them.
Music, man. That was I was watching. There was some TikTok I came across, and it was like, we grew up in the best era, and it just went through people flipping through their CD cases and just stuff that we don't have anymore, that the youth doesn't get to grow up with, and they were going through a bunch of those old bands like the Boss Tones and Offspring and all this. And I was like, man, we had a great run of music in that time.
Yeah, I don't want to sound all old, but, when I see Kendrick Lamar at the halftime show, I'm like, I'm not really sure what this is exactly. It's something. It's art. It's choreographed. Somebody rehearsed this. It seems interesting. But I'm not exactly sure what it is. But when I see The Who playing, I go, okay, I know what that is.
Yeah.
And when I hear them do Quadrophenia or something like that,
I saw The Who play at, they called it Old Cella, but the proper name was Desert Trip. Mm-hmm. And that was when they did the Stones and Paul McCartney and The Who and Bob Dylan and Neil Young and Roger Waters. It was like that crazy lineup. And obviously, Paul's my guy, and so of course his show is the best. But The Who made the Rolling Stones sound like a garage band. I mean, they came out at that show, and it was they were the loudest, they were the tightest, they had the best visuals. Like
The Who's the best,
and then the Stones came out, and it was almost Rock and Roll Circus all over again. Like I don't know if you're familiar with the Rock and Roll Circus with but The Who came out and crushed it. And then the Rolling Stones didn't go on till 3, 4 in the morning, and they were all exhausted, and the performance wasn't that great. So they kind of scrapped a lot of the footage and never released it till recently. And I was like, oh shit, this is Rock and Roll Circus all over again. Like The Who just crapped all over you again.
The Who,
50 years later.
And there's a lot of who's better, The Who or the Rolling Stones? Rolling Stones have a lot of bad songs.
Yeah.
They got sucked up in the sort of disco era, and they got Emotional Rescue and stuff like that. And The Who is a more interesting band than the Rolling Stones
Way
are.
More. I mean, Baba O'Reilly, things like that. Won't Get Fooled Again. I mean, these are just epic opuses.
And just Tommy, the opening theme from Tommy and Quadrophenia and all that kind of stuff.
I
Yes,
got
it's
to
epic
work.
shit. Yes.
I didn't. So I started playing guitar when I was around 11 or 12. I started kind of late, and I had to do an audition for a movie where I played a guitar student, and I was supposed to be some like virtuoso guitar player, like Crossroads kind of thing, Ralph Macchio. I'd never picked up a guitar, and so I borrow my friend's guitar, and I'm like, I'm just gonna go in with a boombox and just mime it, So I picked Pinball Wizard because Roger Daltrey was in the movie, and so I was like, oh, I'll pick a Who song, and so I went in and just faked it, and I was in the waiting room with all these other kids. I was probably, I was about 11 or 12, and they're just like
could all shred.
just noodling in the waiting room, and I'm like, oh my god, I don't even know what I'm doing. But I was a huge fan of music, been to a ton of live shows. I could pretend to rock on stage, and so I went in, did the audition, ended up booking the job, and got to work with Roger Daltrey and Carmine Appice from Vanilla Fudge and Denny Lane from Wings.
Wow.
Were all in this movie, and it was my first experience like in a recording studio recording music, because we had to do songs for the movie, and I got to like I'm sitting there like sharing the mic with Roger Daltrey, and it was amazing. And one of the coolest things was there was a pinball machine in the waiting room of the studio, so I got to play pinball with Roger Daltrey.
Tommy was awesome and interesting. Like I said, for me, whether it's a comedian or music, good is good. I like it to be good, but I like it to be a little interesting, like a little different.
Well, I'm a Brian Wilson guy. Beatles, like it all. I'm into the record Smile and Smiley. Like it's got to. I'm into all the Van Dyke Park's weird, interesting kind of.
Yeah, where you kind of go, why'd they do that, or who thought of that?
Yeah,
I wouldn't have thought of that with some little overdubs and things and changes.
That's what I do with my music. It's I wear all of my influences on my sleeve. I mean, it's all lush Brian Wilson Beach Boys harmonies and Brian May Queen guitar solos, and it's like you can tell, you're like, okay, gee, I wonder what music this kid grew up on.
Well, look, if you take one influence, then you're ripping them off, but if you take 10 influences, then it just sounds good because you essentially are influenced by 10.
Yeah, well, that's what I
best.
did. This new record, all the albums that I put out, I kind of always record what I want to listen to. It's like whatever I'm into, I just like, that's what I want to record in the studio. And so I put out all different types of records. I even put out like this like weird like trap hip hop record. I was hanging out with these rapper guys, and I was like, I could do that. And I put this funny thing out. So there's like all Rockabilly record, pop, all this different stuff. And for this album, I kind of took all of those genres and put them in. It's like 36 tracks on the album, and it's a whole concept.
Oh yeah, I guess you used to run out of room on an album, right?
Yeah.
But now you don't run out of room.
Or it used to be double.
Anymore.
Like I want to make vinyls, but it's gonna have to be like a double or triple vinyl because the album's so long. I got this crazy idea. I love Pan Am and that kind of golden era of commercial flight when every seat was first class. You dress up to get on an airplane, and now everyone's
you see
in there.
those pictures.
Yeah,
and the chicks are wearing go-go boots and mini skirts.
And they've got the giant turkey as they're like
pushing
carving
a serving cart in front of you.
Yeah, the Chateaubriand. Like
I know. Now I'm sitting there in first class. I'm like, could I have lemon? We don't have lemon.
First class is coach. I mean, it is. I mean,
I got handed a pack of powdered lime, reconstituted powdered lime for my drink in first class last time. It's like, it's so sad.
Yeah, and
plastic
and I
utensils.
fly all the time. I mean, literally, I am at the airport 3 days a week, and I look back and I'm going, what? Why am I in this little tube with this thing, and this person's like in her pajamas and with the pillow and the hoodie, and back in the day, I was watching this old movie. And it made no sense to me, the joke, until I started like looking back at the way people used to fly. And this guy was dressed up in a suit, and this person's like, "What are you getting on an airplane?"
Right.
And I'm like, I was like, what? Why would he
Right.
be getting on an airplane if he's wearing a suit? That makes no sense. And then you look back and you're like, oh, it was an event to go on a flight.
You go to LAX now, and I see a lot of women wearing slippers, like literally pajamas. Like people look like, I always say, it looks like you're in a Hilton hotel and somebody pulled the fire alarm at 4 a.m. and
Completely.
you stagger down to the lobby and people are a little disoriented and they're wearing like a sweatpants with no shirt and one flip flop and the guy's like, "What's going on?" It's like that's LAX now.
That is what a great analogy. That is literally LAX. Plus, it's never finished. I don't know what they're building there. I don't know what's going on, but it's never going to be finished.
All right, you think the train from Bakersfield to Merced will be finished first, or whatever's going on in the Delta terminal? Because it's always pardon our mess. And it's always like, we're making a better LAX.
Pardon
and
our
it's
dust.
Like, you're making a better LAX for my great grandkids, not for me, because this is all I see is construction.
And then they did the thing where they don't let you pick up the Uber at the side now. Now you got to go to the LAX. You got to walk all the way. All right, first world problems. But
no,
it's
I get it. It is.
Yeah.
It
So
is weird. Yeah.
I look back and I go, what in the world? They have, I don't know if they still do it, but it's really cool. They have this Pan Am experience. I think it's like up in Reseda or somewhere. It's like an hour from here. But this guy who's obsessed with aviation has just collected the stuff over the years. He has this massive collection of vintage airplane, every seat from every aircraft, basically anything that's ever been on an airplane in the past like 40 years, he has all of the clothing, all of the everything. And he built a replica Pan Am airplane, and you can go in and have a 3-hour dinner and this Pan Am experience as if you're on an international flight.
This exists in more than one place because we can look for it. But when I did Adam Ray's Dr. Phil show in Arizona several weeks ago, when we were done with the show, the after party was basically that. It's shaped like an interior of an airplane, stewardess, cocktails, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
And it's kind of sad that we have to simulate these things, but I guess it is kind of what a treadmill is to hiking.
Yeah.
It's like we need to break a sweat. We're human. We need exercise.
Yeah.
And it's kind of sad, like a robotic dog. Like, but it was Adam Ray's show, and it was the one in Arizona, and it was fun. And then we ended up at this place.
That's cool.
And I don't know. I mean, it is an interesting experience. It's sad that it needs to be simulated.
That's what's depressing about it is I love things like that. Like I love Disney, anything themed, anything that takes you out of the real world, and then you look at the class, you look at the cars, and you look at the houses from that era, the mid-century modern architecture, and all of the Frank Lloyd Wright and all this, and then you walk outside, and you're like, you see these like half-used bars of soap and electric razors like parked in the parking lot, and with no style, no creativity, the colors, like even the colors of the cars now, it's like you have gray, you have this new type of gray. Oh, we've tried this is jet gray. Oh, this is Ariel gray. It's like they're all gray and black and what, like there's nothing.
I think the problem is everything trickles down to economics.
That's
everything, sadly. And we thought, like in the 50s and the 60s, that we were going to build supersonic aircraft that got you, we had the Concorde, and then we were like, if you would get so depressed. You want to get depressed, like open a popular science magazine from like 1969 and have something that says LA, the future.
Yeah.
And it's going to be monorails everywhere. And you'll be able to get from New York to Los Angeles in under an hour with your supersonic pulse jet and everything. And instead, it's just Frontier Airline and a bunch of depressed people, fat people in pajamas packed into something getting yelled at by what we used to call a stewardess, and now we have to call a flight attendant because it's all dollars and cents. Yes, they could make a plane that made it from LA to here in under 3 hours.
Yeah.
They have the technology.
The
Every
Concorde.
ticket would be $11,000.
Yeah.
And so no one's going to pay that. So you brought up the Beatles. You brought up Pan Am. It's the exact amount of time it took the Beatles to get from New York to LA in 1964 as it is today.
Yeah.
Which is depressing, but all economic.
And not as glamorous.
Oh no! Every penny needs to be shaved. Like I was always like, just think about this: the snacks you receive in flight, you would never purchase on the ground,
No.
or even see on the ground. There is no Fiesta mix on the ground. You have Triscuits and Wheat Thins and Nilla wafers and stuff like that.
Also, something that weirds me out when I get onto the airplane is when I sit down and I look to my right and there's an ashtray. And I'm like, how, like, nothing new? Like, how long is this plane? Like, there's ashtrays in. Now, I did have a flight attendant tell me.
That's more Mexico than it is LA.
No,
I
they
would
got
say.
it. They got in the bathrooms. They've got the little thing. And what the flight attendant told me, I said, "How old is this flight?" They said, "No, we have those on the plane, in case somebody does light up a cigarette. We have a safe way to dispose of it." And I was like,
In the bathroom.
Okay, yeah, in the bathroom. There's that little white thing. It looks like a little hanger.
And then the guy goes and spins the prop, and a big plume of smoke comes out, and it fires up, and you go off into the storm. Yeah, listen. The problem with the past is it was rarely interesting and sexy, and then fun, and then it also came with like misogyny and racism and stuff like that, and so we have trouble untangling it. Like look at those outfits the stewardess is wearing.
Yeah,
right. The guys were drinking martinis and slapping them on the ass, and the pilots were telling them, "You got to sleep with me, or you're going to lose your job." And so it always came with some other things. And my plan is untangle it and just give us the aesthetic.
This video. I just saw it recently. It's probably early 60s, maybe like 1964. And it's a hidden camera show. And there's people walking up to purchase tickets for a flight. And a woman dressed as a captain walks up and is like, "Hi, where's gate?" So, asking for directions for the gate as if she's the captain for the people who are getting on the flight. Men, women, didn't matter. Everyone was like, "I'm not getting on that plane." Like, they couldn't believe that there was a woman flying the plane. And it's just it takes you to, like, and kind of my age, like never really growing up in that era. Like, it's, you see that and you're like, how did that ever exist? Like, it's wild. Yeah, no, I completely see the notion that it was a premise. It was pitched as a premise. Like, hey, Alan Fudd. Was Alan Fudd? Who did I think that was Candid Camera. Yeah, okay, whatever. Yeah. Somebody had to conceive it and pitch it, and they go, it's going to crush. We're gonna take a woman and we're gonna put her in a pilot's outfit, and then we're gonna make everyone think she's flying the plane, and they're gonna freak out. And everyone went, "Oh yeah," and no one went, "What does that mean? Yeah. Like, why is that funny? I don't get it. Who cares?" It's like all commercials. I talk about commercials. I grew up watching commercials from the 70s where the mother-in-law would come to stay at the house. And the wife was worried sick that she wasn't keeping a clean enough house for that woman's boy who she was now married to. And the mother would walk in and go, "It looks pretty clean, but is it?" And she'd pull a white glove out of her purse and put it on one hand and drag it along the molding, the trim above the door, and hold her finger out and go, "It didn't pass." And the woman, the housewife, would just hang her head in shame. and then end dust would come in. And it was like, now, somebody pitched that commercial and they went, "Oh yeah, that's going to work. The housewife is very upset because she's not keeping the place nice enough for her son, her little boy, and there's dust that's settled in a random spot on top of a door jamb." Like, if you went to a hospital surgical ward and dragged your white glove on top of dust. Casing on top of the door, you would find dust. But then she goes into a shame spiral, and it's like, yeah, we're doing that commercial. You see that a lot in old coffee commercials. like when the wife is preparing the coffee for the husband, and
I
like the
love it.
voiceovers
I
of
love
what
it.
they're describing, and it's almost like she's like, if I don't make this coffee perfect right now, like
it was all shame-based.
everything is going to.
No, the coffee commercial you're thinking of that was all shame-based is they're at a little dinner party or a little. They invited a couple over for dinner.
Yeah.
And the husband and the wife are standing at the other person's house. And the wife says to the husband, the couple that came over, she goes, Bob, would you like a second cup of coffee? And his wife jumps in and goes, Bob never has a second cup of coffee. And he goes, yeah, I think I'd like a second. She goes, oh my God.
Yeah.
He never has a
second cup at home.
Oh my God. Like, first off, where is this woman? Where is this woman? I've never dated anyone even close to this. I get the do your own laundry.
He never gets a second cup at home. What's wrong with my coffee?
Shame. Such great shame you
That
brought
was
to Bob.
pitched, it was filmed. It was released.
And
it sold coffee.
Yes. And also, I like that she was going to intervene on behalf of Bob. Like, he doesn't do.
Yeah.
Like, nope. And Bob's oblivious. He's like, yeah, I'll have a shame. Oh, yeah, we'll watch it. It's U-Band. It's great. I love all the shame-based stuff. The only, hold on, pause it for a second. We never have the sound ready, but let me tell you, there is a downside to these commercials. I had some sort of illusion as a young man that this would approximate marriage, that I'd get married and I'd pay for everything, and then some point I'd get some shame and a second cup of coffee. It turned out.
Yeah.
Turned out to be a lot different. It turned out to be a lot more, you're not the boss of me, and a little less and dust. But all right, we have it. Here we go.
Oh, sure you can't stay for more coffee?
It's late, and Jim never has a second cup.
You know, I'd love another cup.
Jim never had seconds of my coffee. And I make pretty good coffee. But that night, we both discovered U-Ban.
U-Ban,
All right.
special
So
coffee, because it's made with special beans.
relationship with
100%
women-
Colombia.
I think there's also an older one that's in black and white where she is literally like, "What? I never." It's so she's so
love
ashamed. This girl's kind of like, well, we discovered this new coffee. But there's another one that's older that is. Oh, there it is, the first female pilot.
Yeah, we got it.
Yeah, this is.
Yeah, see, my world
watch the
is-
reactions. Even the flight attendants are like, "Wait, what? I'm not getting on. I don't want to get on that plane."
Let's see it.
3:20. I may be wrong. Do you have the time, sir? Yeah, 3:20.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay, everything's in order. And congratulations, by the way. That was your pilot.
Yeah, mortified.
That girl was? I'm sorry. My pilot? Yeah, what's the matter? That girl? Yes, sir. It's a new service.
God. What year is this? The 50s?
This has got it looks
Could
like
be the early
I think
60s.
it's 60, 62. But go forward to when they're interviewing the flight attendant. Keep going. Right here, this one. Even she can't believe it.
Piloted by a woman?
Piloted by a woman.
She's gonna fly it?
Yeah, she's the pilot.
I've never heard of such a thing.
Do it if it's Miss
Giving a
Wallace
great
and your
Never
friend.
heard such a thing.
Nice to meet Sally.
Oh,
Pardon? Miss Sally. Miss Sally. Hi. I think we'll be getting in about 3:30.
beautiful. Okay. I'm willing to go if you are.
Like they
Crazy.
can't conceptualize that she could fly the plane.
Yeah, I mean, look, pause it. Look, it was basically black quarterbacks. They didn't have any. So what are they comparing it to? So everyone went, well, you can't have a black quarterback.
Yeah.
Like everything in life is kind of like a lot of stuff. If you hang around long enough, will be a lot of people going, well, you can't do that. You go, why not? And they go, because no one did it.
No one has.
Right. And you go, okay, but I mean, the rules, they had weird rules. We had radio rules and stuff. I mean, like when I started, at some point when I was doing Kevin and Bean were on K-Rock radio, at some point Bean was like, I'm moving to Seattle. And they're like, well, no more morning show for you two then. And he's like, no, I'll be there and Kevin will be here and we'll just do it that way. And they're like, you can't do that. And they're like, why not? Because you need to both be here.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I'll just be on the phone or on the line or on the whatever Zoom was back then in Seattle. And they were like, that's never going to work. And then they just did it. And then it just worked.
That's the same thing what we were talking about with the music too. It's like, that's what makes rock and roll. You know, it's like wait, you can't turn it up that loud. Oh, you can't play it like that. Oh, you can't do that. Because why? Because no one's done it. Well, now watch this. This is dope.
What do you think? All right, let me hear Once Over Twice by X. Since you're such an aficionado, Drake, most guys your age, they don't know anything about music.
Oh, I saw them at. They used to have a thing called Hootenanny out in Long Beach. It was a Rockabilly festival, and it wasn't X, but the Knitters played there, so I got to see John Doe. And
it's a good riff. And it's got rockabilly. It's kind of punk.
They definitely have this like
punkabilly,
pre-psychobilly. Yeah, more punkabilly, like before psychobilly.
All right, we'll hear it. I used to see when I used to do radio back in the day. Bands from England thought they had to be mean, and punk bands thought they had to be mean. They had a persona, and now now it's like the world now is. Gene Simmons comes in here and he's making dad jokes, and he's being corny and schmaltzy and stuff. The
only one who never let you down with that, though, was Johnny Rotten. He lived every interview, everything. Like, he was that guy forever. Like, there's...
if you were... But, like, back in the day, if you were Lou Reed, you would do your interview wearing sunglasses and be super... too cool for school and give one-word answers and stuff because that's who you were.
Tom Waits.
Yeah, you just had to be that guy.
Yeah.
And interviewing those guys is brutal.
Oof.
And the British version of them, like Blur and those kind of bands, it's like, oh, God, the worst. Chumbawamba. I have so many brutal, painful interviews with those kinds of bands. The English had more attitude and were like thought they had to be edgier or even punkier or whatever. Chumbawamba were
like the Oasis effect.
Yes, Chumbawamba were anarchists, and it was so brutal. And now people kind of come in and they're sort of themselves, which is you can make good music and just be nice and conversational. I don't have to check your attitude out all the time,
Yeah.
And then you kind of realize, I think it was all a persona with most of those people. Like, they weren't that way with their kids. Like, Lou Reed wasn't wearing cop sunglasses at home. He just they'd bring the caricature.
Yeah.
Oh, we got Wrecking Ball by the Knitters.
So this is where they really go full rockabilly. I loved this. Right. This is my vibe.
Yeah.
Rockabilly was my thing.
John Doe from X, if you look up his IMDb or Wiki or whatever, you're going to see a lot of movies. He was
sound
in a
familiar
lot
now
of
you say
movies. Yeah, I'll throw a few out as soon as my guys find it. Yeah, and then you kind of go, well, is the old stuff better than the new stuff? And you kind of go, I don't know, was Pan Am better than Southwest? Or was an old Cadillac cooler than a new Cadillac?
Well, that's the other thing, too, is, my first car was a 66 Mustang. Unfortunately, I got in a crazy car accident. I was out on the PCH and sitting at a red light, and a guy fell asleep at the wheel. And
wow, that is total.
And hit me head on.
What happened to you?
I broke because I only had the lap belt.
Right.
But so I went into the steering wheel, and those old steering wheels, it's just metal and wood, that thin Mustang steering wheel.
Sure.
So I went right into that, broke my jaw in 3 places, knocked out all my teeth.
How old were you?
19.
Wow.
I was right in the middle of the 3rd season of our show.
Wow.
And which was really amazing. I mean, we went on hiatus while I had my jaw wired shut for 5 months, and all liquid diet, and had to have it was wild. I fractured my neck.
PCH has some of the most horrific accidents.
It was unreal.
People get killed there all the time.
Unbelievable.
And I think it's probably the number one drunk driving highway in America. Like a lot of people would go to Moon Shadows, have a few pops, and then make it back. Yeah, Nobu, and then try to make it back. There's no divider.
No.
Just once you pass out, you just go right across.
There was some construction going on, and on PCH sometimes when they have construction, they put up those ugly fences with the green tarp so you can't see it. But sometimes when there's not, it's just a cliff.
Right.
So luckily, when I got hit, I started spinning and I slammed into a fence that was there to block the view of construction. Right. Otherwise, we would have continued to roll down.
But man, broken jaw, smashed teeth. I mean, the lamp belt. And if you're in a modern car with an airbag, as much as we like to beat up on the past.
Well, the doctor told me that at the speed that the guy hit me, that if I had been in a new car, that it would have just crushed and I most likely would have been dead. But because the front end is so long and it's just pure metal, that it basically the car saved my life.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They were like, if you and
what year was this?
60. Oh, what year was the accident?
Sorry, yeah.
2007, 8.
Yeah, probably that wouldn't be true today in a modern car because they have crumple zones and stuff like that. But back then, a little more heft.
He said that a lot of that, and it was wild. And the guy was on his way home. He took an Ambien at work.
Work?
Yeah, and was like, hey, I got 15 minutes to drive home. It'll hit me when I get to the house, and I'll go to bed. But it hit him on the way. But it hit him on the way.
How soon does he have to get to bed after he gets home?
After he gets home, he's got to go straight to bed.
What time was this?
It had the sun just went down. So he took an Ambien around 5:30.
What's such a weird call?
Yeah. And he was completely asleep when he hit me. So I got out of the car and my jaw, I had a laceration all the way through. I could put my tongue through my chin. And the face wounds. I mean, it's just blood. Just like a hose up to my face. I'm spitting teeth out. They're I hear them like porcelain on the ground, just shattering. And my jaw's in my mouth. I can feel it moving around. It's all broken. But the adrenaline and everything, so I don't feel anything. And I run over to his car, and I'm like, what? And, I'm a 19-year-old kid. I'm assuming I must have done something wrong. This has to be my fault.
Good. Low self-esteem, I like.
Yeah. But no, I was just sitting in a left-hand turn lane waiting to make a left, and he
Were you like Temescal or Sunset or something like that?
It was right by. We were coming back from Zuma, so it was Orange. I think it was Orange or something like that was the name of the street. But yeah, and he woke up and looked at me and goes, "What happened? What? Why would they put a left-hand turn lane there?"
Wow, what was he driving?
A big, I think it was a 99 or 2000 Mercedes, whatever the. The L,
an SUV type thing,
or
a sedan, big sedan.
A sedan. It was the I don't know Mercedes very well, but it's basically the 750 Li version of Mercedes.
Right,
so
right.
It's
that's
huge,
the
giant,
BMW, but the big flagship.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he was fully insured and everything.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Jesus Christ.
Yeah. So luckily, I was able to get really great medical help, and I was wired shut for 4 or 5 months, and had the doctors, they tell you, oh, just blend up some spaghetti, blend up a cheeseburger, and put it through a straw. And I know it sounds gross, but you won't tell the difference. So I was like, no, that's disgusting. I'm not going to do that. So I lived on these little Yoplait, yogurt drinks. And I just got emaciated, and my face, I looked like Quagmire from Family Guy because my jaw was literally swollen out to here. But my body was emaciated because I had no nutrition, nothing in there. And then I had to take this liquid Lortab pain medication. But because I didn't have anything on my stomach, I'm getting gross now. Then I would have to throw up. But my jaw would be wired shut. So I'd be throwing up through the wire. And it was just it was brutal. But luckily I had great work done. And
when you got unwired.
Yeah.
Where'd you go to eat? I don't necessarily mean that day, but I just mean, in a way, it's
It took me a while.
The day you got out of prison, where'd you go?
It took me a while to be able to actually go and eat something that I enjoyed, because opening your mouth after it's been wired shut for that long, you can barely open it. So you're not getting your jaw unwired and like
you're not getting the
going out and having
Jim Brady cut.
Yeah, you're not going to Musso and Frank's.
Right.
Yeah.
You're not going to Laurie's and getting the prime.
Yeah, no.
I get that, but like that's what I mean. Not that day or not whatever. But what were you fantasizing? Did you want an In-N-Out burger?
In-N-Out was a big one. Steak was a big one. I love steak, and so that was a big one. There was a restaurant that I loved. It used to be called Barzak. It's not there anymore, but they actually used to shoot there for Curb Your Enthusiasm. But over in North Hollywood, and their food, but they were really sweet. They found out I got in the accident. And I started getting deliveries to my house from that restaurant of like their puree soups and like things that I could eat. I was like, I like went into the restaurant. I was like, that's so nice that you guys did that. That was so sweet. But yeah, like prime rib, steak, really anything, dude, because you couldn't. Everything was liquid. Everything. You had nothing solid. 4 or 5 months.
Oh,
yeah.
So how much time are you spending in Mexico now?
A lot. I'm on tour right now, and so we just did a huge run of all the cities in Mexico, and then I did a lot of recording in my last record, and then I shoot a lot of my music videos there. So I'm in Mexico quite a bit.
Nonstop Flight is the album, and it's on Spotify and Apple Music. I didn't know you're such a historian of music.
I love music.
No, I agree, and it's always sad to me when people do it and have no idea who you're talking about. You're talking about
brutal.
bands. They just but I will tell you this. I've interviewed 1 million like race car drivers, and they win the Indy 500. And then I go, what's the power plant? Like what's the engine in that car? And they go, I think it's a 1.5. And I go, it's not a 1.5. It's maybe it's a 2.5 or 3 liter, but it's not. And then they go, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I just go, oh, you have no interest in this. I want to geek out on it. You have no thoughts about it.
I'm like that with when it comes to gear, like musical gear. Like everyone just went to NAMM, like the NAMM show, and I'm like, I don't have any. Just give me a guitar, give me an amp, plug it in. Give me a distortion pedal, like. But I've got friends who are just all geared out. They're like, oh, I just got this new thing and it does this and you do this, and I'm like, I cannot. I have no interest in like. I don't know if it's not an interest, but like I just want to play the instrument. Like I don't have that, I got to get into. I got to know what's under the engine. I got to know what's in the amp. I got to know what's in the, I got to know all the little things. Like I don't
know. I kind of assume that those people are less players than the ones who just want to play.
Well, I see maybe a less creativity in it, sort of, I guess. But there's also super creative people that I know that are like that too. But yeah, I don't know. It's just I've always been like, I have my guitar, a pedal, and my amp, and then like guitar players will show up to play with me, and they got like their whole pedal board and their this thing and the wireless this and the new this thing, and I'm like, it's too much stuff. Like,
yeah,
it's too much stuff. Like I have a friend, my mom's a 2-time world champion pool player.
Your mom?
Yeah, and she's in the Hall of Fame. And there's this.
That's crazy.
There's this.
Could she beat the Black Widow?
Bro.
No problem.
Bro, actually, I grew up with Jeanette. She's really, really wonderful lady. Unfortunately, she's gone through she's had some issues, health wise and stuff. Yeah, it's pretty sad. But she's awesome. But yeah, my mom is like.
She was.
A different level of than Jeanette. Yeah. Jeanette's a great player, but my mom is like.
Really?
Nolan Ryan compared to that.
So crazy.
Yeah. But what was my point? Oh, there's this. I don't know if you've ever heard of this pool player named Earl Strickland.
Yeah, I've heard that name.
Earl the Pearl, but
right.
He's just he's like this guy from North Carolina. Joe Rogan does an amazing impression of him. But he always shows up, and he's got the new thing that has to go on the hand, and the new finger extender, and the new and I'm always like, how do you just just shoot the ball. Like, you're one of the greatest players of all time, but you're always showing up with this new thing on his shoulder, this new thing, a new beekeeper outfit, like this whole thing. And I'm like, just, I don't know. But that's how I feel like when guitar player, I'm just never been like that guitar player.
My take on those guys is the version of this I have is I do automotive racing, and guys will show up in $500 racing shoes and stuff like that. It's kind of unnecessary. But if you win or you're fast, then it's sort of like, all right, well, you earned those shoes or whatever. It's the guys who show up it's like when you see the guys on the bikes and they got the full Cinzano gear and it looks like they're sponsored by some Italian company and they're fat.
I was just snowboarding and I felt the same way. I'm like, these people are coming down the mountain and I'm like, this looks like an ad for and it's not like they're great skiers. Like
right.
They literally, it's like they went for that weekend, but they had to have
it looks like they're sponsored professional, but you can tell
head
by
to
their
toe, everything. It's like that scene in Dumb and Dumber when or in The Jerk when he comes out of the car and he's got the big feather in the hair, he's got all the accoutrement, everything's like, everything is the designer thing, and I'm like, dude, you've been skiing twice.
I know.
You just spent $3,000 on an outfit you're gonna wear today.
I know. I always think about. I did a race with a guy, and he had the $500 shoes, and then he was the slowest guy, and then I made fun of him on the podcast, and then he wrote me a thing like, why are you making fun of me or whatever, and I had a moment where I could have like tweeted back at him, and I just went, sorry. You're right. Like, I get it. I was making a joke, but I get it. I sound like an asshole, so sorry. Mm. And then he wrote back, okay, no problem. And then he died like 6 months later. And he was like young. And I was like, oh, God, I'm so glad I apologized to him instead of clapped back at him.
What a turn.
Yeah, guy's name was Carter Lay of the Lay's potato chip fortune.
Oh, wow.
Like, his family was Lay's potato chips. So I guess he had some money for driving shoes, but he died at like 45 or something. So Quiet on the Set. That was the doc, and it highlighted all the abuse and all the stuff over at Nickelodeon, which I remember when it came out, it was a big deal, but I didn't watch it because I tend to get depressed with those types of situations. But is Nickelodeon sort of like, I don't know, the Catholic Church? Like, who would be attracted to work with those people? I don't mean the Catholic Church. What I'm saying is I don't want to get involved with scouting, for instance. But maybe I was a Catholic Big Brother. There was a big deal. Like, are you a pedophile? Like, we need to know. Like, why are you here?
Yeah.
What has attracted you to be a random Catholic Big Brother?
Yeah.
I don't have any notion about working with kids. It probably annoys me.
The thing about the doc that it was kind of a bummer was that it specifically focused on Nickelodeon. Mm-hmm. But it's really just kids TV or kids in anything. You know what I mean? In soccer, in baseball, in racing. Whatever. It's just like you said. You always have to have those things of like, okay, dude, like, why do you want to do this job? And which is weird because it's like you don't want to have to do that, but it was my experience was not a good one.
You were a survivor of molestation, I guess we'd say.
Yeah.
Was an acting coach.
Yeah.
And
there was a dialogue coach that worked on the show.
And
so a dialogue coach, for those who don't know, there's people who run lines with you. So they're not the director, they're not the producer, but they're around whenever you're rehearsing. And say, for example, it's like, oh, I've got this scene coming up with Adam. I want to run my lines, but Adam's, not available. So I go up to the dialogue coach and say, hey, can I run my lines with you? Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And if someone's not available,
they follow you around with the script.
Yeah. And they'll do stand-in stuff, but they're always around. So they're like ever present on set. And that was the person that I was involved.
Is that person behind bars now?
No.
Is there any repercussions? Oh, they were.
Well, he did. Well,
because he must have done this quite a few times.
Well, my case with him is the only one that's ever come to light. But
really,
there's no way that
it's not a one and done type.
No, especially the way that it was done and how it calculated. And one of the wild things was that after. So you really don't know anything about this, huh? Do you want me to blow your mind?
Yeah, I heard bits and pieces. Like I said, I got kids. You know, I got depressed. It makes me depressed.
All right, I'll just give you like a couple of like, not highlights is a horrible way to put it, but just like some things about the things that kind of. I mean, obviously the abuse and all of that was the hardest to endure, but the aftermath of it, which was really eye-opening and shocking. For example, and this is pre-TMZ, pre-Twitter, when we had the trial. Well, it wasn't a trial; it was a sentencing because he pled, and so nobody was worried about showing up to a courtroom and a courthouse to support this guy and have TMZ outside, making a list of all the celebrities and executive producers and directors that are.
Support
on the left side of the courtroom, so no one was concerned. So I show up to the sentencing, and this is after the whole, the investigation. It's like a year and a half, 2 years of just my hair fall. It was it's just unbelievable. Talking to detectives, telling them what happened, having to catch him on the phone, doing a sting operation with a phone and a recorder in a room, like a movie, like I'm watching Forensic Files or something. And then when we showed up to court, on my side of the courtroom was me, my brother. My memory is fuzzy, but I think that this is who was there. It was me, my brother, my friend Michael, my stepdad, and my mom. And on the left side of the courtroom, there was not an empty seat. Actors, directors,
in support
producers,
of the pedophile abuser.
They wrote 41 letters.
Wow.
In support. Do you want?
Yeah.
I don't think this is.
Go ahead.
I don't know if this is good.
Go ahead.
I don't know if this is good for air, but I'm going to have you read this off air because. You can go Google them. Just 41 letters from, and I'm telling you, it's so wild.
Essentially calling you a liar?
Calling me a liar? Calling me, no. They couldn't call me a liar because he admitted to everything on the phone.
Right.
I got him recorded admitting everything.
Right.
So they couldn't call me a liar. But it was my fault. I instigated it. He was immensely under, he was under immense pressure from me, that I was pursuing him, that I was sleuth-like in my. You
were how old at this point?
13.
Yeah. Okay. Keep going. Sorry, I know nuts, but
right. And I'm just this like kid. I'm like, cool. I got this show, and I get to do what I love to do, and I get to act, and wow, everyone's really nice, and everyone's creative like me. It's like when you join theater class, you're like, whoa, I found my people. Like you like to be goofy and make weird voices, and you don't take stuff seriously, and oh, cool, and that's the kind of the environment that I was like living in, and unfortunately, it's like there's this blurred boundary of. The young kids want to be hip and cool and want to hang out with the older people and fit in and want to be respected by the director, and this is my job and this is my craft, and I want to be even though I'm just a kid, like you want to navigate through this like adult world and be looked at.
Yeah, I get it. I totally get it.
And so you get and then all of a sudden people just start to like.
But it was really the 41 people showing up in support of this guy.
Well, that's 41 letters that were written.
Letters.
There were way more people that showed up. And the letters, I mean, I'm not going to put it on there. You got it. They're so, because I didn't know about the 41 letters when
you just
this
knew
happened.
Who was in the courtroom.
I just knew who was in the courtroom. When they did the investigation for this documentary, the letters were sealed. So all of these people thought that these letters would never see the light of day.
And they turned out to be some prominent people.
Dude, they're all celebrities. They're all famous.
Really?
Yeah.
Most famous person, who?
James Marsden.
Really?
Yeah. Works like crazy the guy never stops working.
Right.
Go look at his Instagram. Go look at his Instagram messages, comments.
So
I'm surprised that
he just went.
I'm surprised
I worked
he's
with
working
this
and Justin
guy.
Baldoni's not. That's crazy.
Right.
It's wild.
So he worked with him when he was younger and
a
is supporting
praising
him.
letter about how. And what was so amazing, which I thought was just blew my mind, was in all of these letters they were like, I never felt uncomfortable around him. He never made me feel uncomfortable. I've shared hotel rooms. I'm like, you're all adults.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
Like that's like me saying like I like grown women and I get accused of something, but then my friend's like, well, I shared a hotel room with him and he never made me feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's like, well,
I know,
you're not really in his
yeah.
Like, but they're all like, grown women, like, I always felt comfortable around him because you're not a 13-year-old little boy.
Right.
Like,
it's
just wild.
It's really disappointing.
Yeah.
Like at the end of the
Joanna
day.
Kern, Alan Thicke.
Alan Thicke.
TV's dad.
Wrote
Praising Brian,
the
saying
theme songs.
that he would write, that he would work with him tomorrow, that he would be happy to have him work around kids, everything. All of this is all in the letters. And he admitted to it. This is no like, hey, I'm just taking a bullet here, or you don't really understand what happened. Like, no, it's literally like the count
He
1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
yes.
6, like
And
oral
they
copulation,
wrote-
anal. I mean, I don't want to go into the whole thing, but
and they wrote the letters after knowing when he did
that. There like people that I grew up with that I mean, one of my favorite directors that I worked with that he was felt like he was one of my best friends and loved it and all this, and then all of a sudden, so they were sealed. So years later, when they did this documentary, is when they petitioned the court to unseal the letters.
Mm-hmm.
So I got a stack of letters like this that I never knew
5 inches
existed.
thick. Oh wow!
By people I thought were my friends, celebrities, Taran Killam from SNL. James Marsden, Alan Thicke, Joanna Kearns, Will Friedle, Ryder Strong. I mean, the list goes on. Prominent. There were letterheads from big producers that literally their company is like such and such family entertainment.
Wow.
And then just a scathing. I mean, excuse me, not scathing. Just a glorifying letter of how amazing this person is.
Well, I mean, you wonder why this stuff was able to go on. I mean, you think about Harvey Weinstein and guys like that, but you wonder why these things were able to sort of perpetuate themselves.
What was
for
so
long.
wild is like, see, now my tinfoil hat goes on, you know, and I start going through my life as going, that's a huge story,
Right.
Like that's a massive story. Within 3 months of each other, 2 major cases are picked up at the same show, on the same network, at the same thing. 3 months apart, major cases of abuse by mine, and then another one by a guy named Jason Handy. And that's a headline.
Right.
Children's television, 3 months apart. And then there was another one, but it was at the animation studio. I mean, if I was an investigative reporter, I'm looking at this like, oh, this is my, I'm going to break this story. And it's 2004, 2005, and this is going down at this big prominent children's network. And, you know, and then everything that goes on inside of it of like, you know, just the mechanism of having to keep these kids, you know, oh, you have to be a good role model and you have to look like this. And then, you know, just like Jeanette McCurdy's book, you know, she's like, all of a sudden I'm 13 walking down the street. I get a picture taken of me. It gets put in the magazine and tells me I'm fat. I'm like, dude, I'm just a kid eating a donut. Like, why do I have to now look at somebody calling me fat in a magazine? Like, hope she has more, you know, eating donuts in Starbucks. It's like, dude, I'm just a kid. And so like all of that like put together, I'm like, dude, this is a huge story. And it was radio silence, dude. You couldn't, and so I'm like, is there somebody? But if I trip outside of a bar that I wasn't even in,
right,
Drake Bell's drunk outside of a bar,
right,
all over the news. And I'm like, is there somebody up there? Because you can't find anything on Brian. You can't find anything about my case. You can't find anything about, until now after the documentary. But it was literally like, You couldn't find anything on the internet about it except for like on the official, police website or Megan's Law. Like nothing.
I mean, listen, 10 minutes ago, I thought everything was I didn't believe in any conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
And then, COVID came around and a few other situations came around, and I'm kind of mostly.
Well, that's what the letters did to me
with a lot of this. Yeah.
The letters, because going through my whole life, right, I go, okay, there's bad actors in Hollywood. Well, obviously,
right,
bad actors, but there's bad players in Hollywood, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's bad players in everything. You're gonna have somebody at your job that you're like, he, he said something inappropriate, or he's being a little weird. You like, or hey, this coach is, we see it in sports, we see it everywhere, right?
Sure.
So, wow, I just lost my train of thought.
You didn't.
I don't know why. I just had a total break.
Well, look, it's all right because it's kind of this emotional subject, and it gets probably the adrenaline pumping.
It does. I had a point for that.
Well,
I'll get back to it.
All right. I think what you were saying is
that's what I was saying.
You think it's really isolated, then you see the letters.
There we were. So you think that there's bad players and everything. Like you got to keep your guard up. You got to watch out. But when I got the letters, I was like, wait a second. So there really is a cabal. Like there really is an onion of there's the perpetrator, then there's the people who protect them, then there's the people who are. And how many people didn't write letters that just met with him at dinner and said, "Hey man, I'm not writing a letter because that might get out. That might get out one day." No, they're sealed. Nothing's sealed. I'm not putting my name on it. But hey, come to dinner at my house. Hey, I'm in your corner. I'll support you. You need a job. You need work. You need this. I got you. He went to work on Nickelodeon Disney Channel right after he got out of jail.
Really?
Yeah.
How long did he spend in jail?
16 months.
Wow, that's anyway.
16 months, and he went to as soon as he got out, he went and worked on Sweet Life of Zach and Cody.
Well, all I can say
registered just out of jail.
Offender. I'm going to write a book
Disney hired
called "I Had No Idea Adults Would Be This Disappointing."
Yeah.
Drake, let me give you a plug. I'm sorry, it's a very interesting story, and it's fascinating, but. And I appreciate your candor.
Yeah.
Nonstop Flight is available now on Spotify and Apple Music. And Drake, I'll just have to have you back, not to talk about this subject, but we'll keep going on music.
Well, no, I love talking with you. I'm a big fan. I've listened to you for years, and back in obviously like the Loveline days when I wasn't supposed to be listening to it, my parents didn't know. Learned a lot from that show as a young kid. But yeah. So anyway, this has been really cool, and I'd love to come back.
Thanks, Drake. We'll do some news. We'll have Michael Malice will join us, and we'll do all that right after this.
Cool.
It's time to check Adam's voicemail.
Eastman, Cole here in Illinois. My 11-year-old son was walking around the house with his shirt off the other day. I couldn't help but notice some bruises on his chest. I asked him what was going on with those. He said him and his buddies have been giving each other titty twisters. I smiled and said, "Good for you guys. Keep it up. Get it on."
You can leave us a message at 888-634-1744.
Michael Malice has joined us. The podcast, You're Welcome with Michael Malice, author, provocateur, thinker. Good to see you, Michael.
Good to be here, Adam. I've been waiting to do this show for years, so I'm very excited to be here.
It's an interesting time to be alive, right?
Interesting is usually a euphemism for bad. So this is like the opposite of interesting. It's like we've never seen anything like this in our lifetimes, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean interesting, in like I would mean queer, not meaning gay. I mean interesting. Yeah, with this is cool, with a dusting of, I can't believe what these fucking idiots are saying all the time, like with the sort of profound disappointment in adults, like going, wow, this is what you believe, or this is what you're saying. Like, I'm all over the road, but mostly I'm amused.
Yeah, I think it's the kind of thing. It's like, well, what happens next, right? It's like I've been keeping a Twitter thread of like headlines every day, like an official thread of winning. And at a certain point, you're like, we're going to be crossing Rubicons we didn't know were there. I mean, I'm just excited. I'm sure you guys are as well to some extent that RFK got sworn in, Tulsi sworn in, Cash I'm sure is going to be a given. Those are quick question marks. And only one snake, McConnell, voted against them. That says a lot about Trump's control of the Republican Party.
Well, I think we all have a feeling of potential, like what could be if we just, I've been fantasizing about, what if we just ran this place like a business and we just got lean and mean and we got really pragmatic about everything. And we just did the stuff that made sense and we stopped throwing money away and we stopped listening to these bad ideas. But it was always a fantasy experiment that was never going to happen because of the bureaucracy and how bloated everything was. And now we get to sit back and kind of go, what could we really do if they took the governor off?
I don't care about lean and mean. I just want mean.
Right.
I want retribution. I want vengeance. Every one of those governors that put people in old folks' homes during COVID got reelected. I mean, there's so many people who have not been accountable for things that anyone listening to this would never imagine doing in a million years, the levels of depravity. If it was just like this Hunter Biden, I'm getting a cut from Ukraine, daddy's coming in on a deal, we'd be fine. Who cares? That kind of stuff happens all the time. There's levels of malevolence that I think any of us wouldn't have ever thought imaginable. And if that gets uncovered, that's what I'm really excited about.
Yeah, I'm with you, too. Like, I've had more than one person, usually female, saying, why do you keep trolling these people about COVID? Nobody knew at the time. And I go, fuck you. I'm never going to be done yelling at everyone about COVID. And they go, let it go. And I go, nope, never gonna stop trying to punish people who tried to punish me about COVID. There's an article that Mayhem has that we'll get into later in the news about learning and school closures and how kids were hurt, especially the poor kids and the brown kids and the black kids. And I'm like, I got to pull up all the text I had with the LA Unified School District where they were attacking me when I was telling them to open the schools. And then I was calling them cowards and pussies and everyone was yelling at me the whole time. Fuck y'all is what I have to say. And you did real damage. Like Roberta, oh God, I always screw her name up. Roberta Weintraub or whatever her name is of the teachers union. You hurt kids. You hurt tons of kids.
You mean Randy Weingarten?
Randy Weingart. That's right. I always screw that one up. Randy Weingart, you hurt people, possibly killed people. And Fauci and Gavin Newsom and all of this. I'm not done. One of my friends from high school had a restaurant called Tin Horn Flats 2 miles from here. It's gone because they kept outdoor dining open and they defied the city of Burbank and they put an iron fence around it and destroyed these people's lives. So no, I'm not done.
Every time I bring this up on Twitter, a bunch of fans replied, "My dad died alone.
Right.
We couldn't have a funeral. My grandma spent her last month alone." Why, even if this is true, we've all seen these like 13 Monkeys movies. Put on hazmat suits and have a funeral, right? Let's just take that face value. Let's have a hazmat funeral. At least we can hold hands and say no. And there's been no apologies. In fact, I'm sure you saw that piece. I think it was The Atlantic, where they're like, we should apologize for COVID, meaning they want to forgive us, that we're the ones who did something wrong. Explain to me why children need to be given shots, which children love to get shots, right? Yeah. Every 6 months in perpetuity for a disease they can't even get. The thing is, Adam, the reason why we have to keep yelling about it is if I do something bad and I get away with it, why wouldn't I do it again?
Right.
It worked.
Yes. And then the question that I sort of get back to with folks like Gavin Newsom, like, are you guys evil or are you incompetent? Like, what is going on? You knew there was never any data to shut down outdoor dining. So why did you shut down outdoor dining? There wasn't data to keep the schools closed. So why did you keep the schools closed? Why did you do this? Why did you shut down the beaches? Why did you do this?
And we know he's evil and not incompetent because when what was the Olympics or whatever came to LA, he cleaned it up overnight or whatever that UN meeting, whatever it was.
Right. Chinese.
So the point is, I was just
ambassador.
recently in Japan in April. I didn't want to fall in love with it because I hate that manga weeaboo culture, and I couldn't help it. I fell in love with Japan, and I'm from Brooklyn originally, right? And when you're in a city at night and everyone's drunk and everyone having a good time and everyone's safe, you realize this is on purpose. That New York and LA and Chicago, this is by design. You know exactly what needs to be done to keep the city safe at night for everyone, even if everyone's drunk. And you're choosing the crime, you're choosing the depravity, you're choosing everything else that goes with it. It's not like they don't have the money. They certainly do.
So what's the end game then? And
power, don't you think?
Well, yeah, but what's in it for them to run a city poorly and inefficiently, or a state poorly? Like, Gavin Newsom has some sort of retarded fantasy about being president, but LA just burned to the ground and California's a shit show. And we're used as an example for the rest of the nation of like, you don't want to end up like California, do you? And his designs on being the president, I know he's delusional, but he can't think that America wants California sort of exported to the rest of the nation. So what's in it for him?
Wait, hold on. I don't think that when someone like a Gavin Newsom runs for president, he cares what America wants. He cares what he could put over. And he put it over very successfully in California. His reelection numbers were through the roof. And I think people listening to this underestimate the power, although it's falling, of the corporate press and how blue-pilled Americans still are. Trump got 50% of the vote. Officer Harris, who, as I said in Rogan, is a literal retard, she got like 46% of the vote, 45% of the vote. That's not a huge margin. And he's clearly smarter and more coherent than her. So if she can get that, there's no reason why, if there's, let's suppose, some kind of economic catastrophe, he doesn't have a good shot. And at the very least, he's got a great shot at raising his platform. If I run for president and nothing happens, I'm on CNN in perpetuity. I got book deals in perpetuity. I get speaking fees in perpetuity. I get to be a lobbyist. It's all upside for him.
And what about the media? Because while I have a certain amount of ire for the powers that be, especially on the subject of something like COVID, I have more ire for the media because all, Garcetti was doing as the mayor of Los Angeles is being a whipping boy for the school unions and the teachers unions, and all Gavin Newsom was is satisfying his union overlords and being just generally weak and soft and towing a line even if it was hurting people. Standard issue stuff, like you said, Hunter Biden goes to Ukraine, fucking put on a couple of boards, hammer some checks, does it on dads. He's the bag man for his dad. Standard stuff, been done a million times. That's why most people get into politics. What the fuck is CNN doing during COVID? Like, what is Sanjay Gupta doing? Like, he's saying this stuff is horse paste. Then he goes on Rogan and has to kind of eat shit. And then he comes back the next day to CNN and has that idiot Don Lemon go, well, it is used on horses. And he goes, well, that's right, Don. Like, what is Sanjay Gupta doing? What is this physician? What is this board certified physician doing, selling his soul? I would never listen to a word that guy said ever again. I would never listen to a word that Wolf Blitzer ever said, or Anderson Cooper, or Don Lemon. What the fuck are these people doing? What is the mainstream media doing? What is Newsweek doing when they're writing hit pieces on me? Because
I wouldn't say, I would never call them mainstream, because calling them mainstream absolves them of their malfeasance and depravity. Mm-hmm. But it is their job to, we're taught since we're kids that everyone who's informed has to have an opinion on every issue. And a lot of people have families, jobs, they've got things to worry about. So it's really easy, because then all I got to do is turn on CNN or read the New York Times. And in one article, not only will I know what the issue is, but I'll be told what my position on it is. And they're much worse than the politicians, and the universe is even worse than them. Yes. And I can demonstrate it quite easily in two ways. Ask yourselves this: who would you rather have on the Supreme Court? 9 random Democratic senators or 9 members of the New York Times editorial board?
Right.
And here's another example. Let's suppose I'm a Democratic congressman, right? In during the first Trump term. And I think Trump's terrible and he's an idiot and racist, all these things. He shouldn't be in the White House, blah, 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 the whole shebang. And impeachment comes along and I'm like, you know what? I think the guy sucks, but impeachment's a huge barrier. I'm not going to vote for him. My constituents have heard for 4 years, Trump, Russia, Trump, Russia, Trump, Russia, Trump, Russia. I, as a Democratic congressman who hates Trump, am not in a position to pass on impeachment, or else I'm going to get voted out. So it's very clear who's the dog and who's the tail.
Yeah, sad. And also a certain amount, and I would say a large amount, for me, of my ire goes to the public at large. And I'm not talking about the 19-year-olds in college who've been brain poisoned by this bullshit. I'm talking about the average 53-year-old Los Angelino who went in for this shit, hook, line, and sinker. And I told them over and over again, like, what are you doing? There's nothing. And they dove into it head first. I mean, ultimately it's the people's fault. Because when they closed the beaches, we should all just went to the beach that day. That's what I have to say.
I think should is like a blue pill term. You can never expect the vast majority of people who are ballast in any culture to have independent thought or ideas. As Mencken said 100 years ago, the average man does not want to be free. He simply wants to be safe.
Yes.
And there's a huge cost if I'm just some powerless random person or limited power if I got a family for me to stick my neck out. We saw this very vividly during COVID. Jimmy Kimmel, your old buddy, was cracking jokes about how if you haven't been vaccinated and you die in the hospital, too bad there, Coffee. I mean, they're literally laughing at the idea of people dying. So if I'm like a school teacher, mechanic, something like that, and I start opening my mouth, it's just like the moderate Muslims. I'm the first one who's going to be targeted and have my life destroyed. So it's very hard to swim against the environment that you're in.
No, I concur. And maybe I'm expecting a little too much out of humanity and expecting men mostly to have a little more, to be a little more chivalrous and have a little more dignity. I think it's a bygone era. Maybe it went out with religion. I don't know. Maybe a lot of those tenets were sort of religious.
Adam, the country was founded on the idea that the average man's opinion wasn't going to be taken into account. And I think that model is not necessarily a bad one because, like, there's lots of issues that all three of us shouldn't be running our mouths on. We don't understand like radioactivity or, high class calculus or whatever the issue might be. So the idea that everyone has to have an opinion on everything makes absolutely no sense, especially people who are working hard to put money, food on the table and working like 2 jobs, something like that. That's crazy.
No, I concur. I guess for me, I have kids, and my kids have lots of friends, and COVID didn't harm any of them ever. And I saw it. And so I went, I'm not going to go along with these bizarre protocols because these kids are fine, and I don't see any detriment to them at all. And there's no statistics that kids are being hurt. And I knew a few adults that were that way, but they were kind of few and far between. And I was just hoping that people would say, well, there's a doctor and he's been deplatformed. How come? Well, he had some ideas that were non-pharmaceuticals to combat COVID or what have you, or he was talking about vitamin D and sunlight and exercise or something, and they pulled him off of Twitter. And I wish more adults would have gone, I want to hear what that person has to say, because I'm suspicious that you keep canceling people saying they're dangerous. I'd like to know, and the guy's a physician, how reckless and dangerous is he? I would like to investigate that a little bit on my own.
This is how Dr. Drew got red-pilled. So when COVID was rolling out, he was asking very basic medical questions, and randos were yelling at him, shut the F up, you know what you're talking about. And to remind everyone, he's a real doctor, not a Jill Biden doctor. And he's like, I'm literally just asking basic medical questions. I'm not even taking a position. And someone who, has no medical training at all feels empowered and entitled to tell me to sit down and shut up. Something is not adding up here, especially, understandably, if you have a new disease rolling out and people don't have answers, that's the time for brainstorming sessions. That's the time for all right, let's throw out every idea. 99% of them are going to be stupid. But if we get one good idea that works, let's go with that one because we don't know what's going on. That's how you're supposed to handle an emergency. We've all seen, was that Armageddon, all these stupid movies, there's a meteor hitting the earth and the janitor the one like, hey, why do we, put Ben Affleck on this ship and put a bomb on it? Goes, hey, great work, man. Like, that's how it happens if there's a catastrophe. All hands on deck, instead of let's minimize the voices having input and defer to one guy who, bungled things with AIDS not once but twice.
Yeah. What's your Fauci take? I mean, and I'm with you, I think, in that whether it's Fauci or it's Biden or it's many other actors, it's not enough that they just sort of sail off into retirement. Right. Like, I think they did real damage. I think they lied. I think they hurt people. I think there's criminal behavior involved with their activities, and I would like something to be done about it. And I love the idea that this is retribution somehow, like, no, it's not. He lied about the origins of COVID the entire time. So I'd like to know a little more about that, but I don't know what your head is on it.
I just read this superb book called And the Band Played On, which was the history of how AIDS, it was like a year by year, how AIDS swept across first New York, San Francisco, other cities. And Fauci pops up there. And it's a shocking this book was published in the 90s. And it's a shocking moment where I think it was the 90s, where he's like, yeah, we don't know if it's spread by like sneezing. And they did know at the time. And all these men and drug addicts and young gay men and so on and so forth, it spread through, like hemophiliacs, were already being isolated and treated like complete pariahs. And now they're even more isolated and left to die alone because he was so irresponsible. So this man I came into it thinking he's an innocent actor. But when I read this book, I'm like, this guy's been at it for decades and has never been held accountable. And this is really sick and inexcusable. Because as you say, it's not like, okay, someone's arguing for higher taxes and wealthy people pay more and blah, 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 or there's waste. Hunter Biden gets this cut of the deal. People suffered in ways that I personally am glad I never had to. But again, all these, no funerals. I moved from Brooklyn to Austin in 2021. Every single place that I used to love to go to in New York City couldn't survive COVID. Target's fine. Victoria's Secret's fine. But that little shingle that started in 1910 because someone came over from Sicily and started a butcher shop, they're gone. We bailed out Wall Street in 2008, but all these magical special places went under and no one cared and no one was accountable for it. And it was by choice. I will never forgive these people.
What do you think their ire toward Trump is? Is it him as a disruptor? I mean, what is the real, they don't think he's Hitlerian and they're not worried about our democracy, but they cannot have him because he's going to disrupt their status quo or expose them in some way.
Don't you think the fear has been broken? If we were talking in 2023 and I said Mark Zuckerberg's going to go on TV and say even something slightly nice about Trump, like, oh, he's tall, Facebook would be a wrap.
Right.
But it happened and there was no blowback. And there's been no blowback for anyone who's supported him, like Mark Andreessen, some of these Silicon Valley types. I don't know where that switch flipped, whether they just got exhausted, but it sure did. And what's even more interesting, Adam, is he's actually doing damage to things that they value, like that repealing that LBJ executive order, going after DEI. So when he's eating too much ice cream, they're all having complete meltdowns, no pun intended. But now where he's actually taking a hammer to their stuff, they're relatively much more subdued, and I can't understand it because now's the time you should get freaked out if you're a leftist because he's actually doing the things that you were worried about.
Well, the people who are in business are sort of in the business of figuring out who's in power and how to get them to like them and help them and take care of them. And if they bet on Joe Biden or the Democrats, then they'll do that with them. And now Trump's he's in the pilot seat and they're on the airplane. So they better go kiss up to Trump. Like I get that. I'm talking more sort of permanent Washington. Like, are they worried that he's going to expose things like Epstein's flight list and log or declassify things or generally just interrupt their money laundering basic enterprise, the billions of dollars that come in and go out that no one asks any questions about or says anything about? They have a pretty stout and lucrative status quo to protect, and maybe they don't like him as a disruptor.
Well, it's very cozy. I've said this for years. This is not going to be anything anyone disagrees with. Hillary Clinton is always going to be closer to Mitch McConnell than she's going to be to some union janitor who voted Democrat their entire life. Like, people understand this. Like George Carlin said, it's a big club and you ain't in it. Right. But I think one of the things that Trump really screwed up for them is they're not good at improv. Like, he throws out these grenades, and maybe you or I or people who do podcasts who have to speak off the cuff, we know how to react, divert it, change it to a joke, speak impromptu. The enemy class is not composed of impressive people. I'm sure you saw some of those hearings when they were trying to yell at Pam Bondi or Tulsi Gabbard, and it was whatever that guy's the senator from California now, that lightweight, and he's yelling, but he's reading from a script. It's like, if you're upset, you know how to yell. Like, if any of us has been in a fight, the words just come out because you're so angry, but you're reading this scripted angry speech poorly, and it's embarrassing. So I think he's really kind of exposed that these high status people, and before, back in the day when there's 4 news networks, you only see them at 30-second clips, so you can think that they're smart and they got their shit together. Now you watch them and you're like, this is who's in charge. I'd rather be led by the cast of Big Brother.
Yeah, I mean, when you see people like Mazie Hirono, and those types, you're like, wow, these are amongst the dumbest people I think I know. I've ever heard speaking to a microphone. They don't have any kind of self-awareness either, which is funny. They just start yelling and sounding semi-incoherent. And then you realize once you become an adult and you can sort of gauge people's IQ, where you're like, oh, this person's an idiot. Like, they're really a buffoon.
Can you imagine having her as a guest on your show? I've had guests, like, you're like 30 seconds in and you're like, oh shit, what am I going to do? This person is genuinely dumb. I don't want to out them as dumb because I'm not trying to, be mean, but this is not an impressive personality. And then you're stuck for like an hour. So yeah, and she's not unique. One after the next, you're like, holy crap. Like, who are these people persuading?
I think they think that if they, and it's kind of a feminine thing, but they think if they say stuff with enough passion, that people will go along with it, which is, and you have to say it with a certain amount of gravitas too. I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday, and it was something with my stepdad, and I said to him, my stepdad, he's an okay guy. He always treated me like I was his stepson. And he went, yeah, okay, good. And I went, I'm making a joke. And he goes, huh? And I go, he didn't treat me like a son. He treated me like a stepson. And he went, oh, yeah, you're right. Okay, I get the joke now. And then I would always joke with people. I did a Crank Yankers bit where I called a funeral home and I just said, I'm the son, and my mom died, and then I said, no child should ever have to bury a parent. And she went, oh, you're so right. You're so right.
Yeah, but Adam,
and if you say stuff with gravitas, people go like, yeah, no, you're right.
But Adam, you forget the boomers were raised with laugh tracks because they can't perceive humor.
Oh, that's right.
Unless there's a laugh track, boomers. That's why we need a sarcasm font on Twitter. It's like, no, you need a sarcasm font because you can't perceive things other than at face value. And to your point, there are a lot of people who are politically ambivalent, and that's fine for them. If you see someone on TV all passionate, it's kind of like WWE.
Right.
Like, okay, this person's fighting for me. Look how worked up they are. They care. And they go by secondary characteristics like emotional outbursts and things like that.
Yeah, they're almost more like pets. Like when you get really upset, your dog will come up to you and like push its nose at you. like they're more Labrador than they are human being. They're just getting some. Wow, Mazie Hirono seems very upset about JFK Jr. So, what's your prediction? Would you my hope is that Trump kicks a ton of ass. Good things happen. We get kind of used to it and go, no more word salad politicians. We want to get shit done. and that would be nice to move forward from this day on as Americans. But I don't know.
I don't think that's ever going to happen. I think people want word salad. It's going to be a thing. I am excited about the opportunities for international relations. I think him pulling back our presence everywhere on Earth is going to be very healthy. I think him encouraging more countries, like with this USAID stuff, to be more self-reliant is more healthy as well. And I think one of the things that he's done, and I'm sure you agree, is to inculcate this huge sense of skepticism toward the corporate press. For decades, the Republicans were ranting and raving about the Democrats. The Democrats come and go. The New York Times is still here. It's been here for quite some time. That's your enemy. It's not Nancy Pelosi. She's just a crook. She doesn't have these kind of depraved ideologies. And then behind the New York Times, you have the universities. So if he takes the fight to the universities, as he seems to have signaled during his campaign, I'm going to be absolutely giddy. And the thing is, they are not staffed with heavyweights. These people are heavyweights in terms of their field. They can tell you inside out everything about British literature. But if you look at their social media output, these are not impressive minds of strategy and tactics. So that is something I'm really excited about. And also the Department of Education and increasing homeschooling and decreasing government schooling, which are literal prisons for children. If once you have like 20% of the country of the kids who are like know how to think for themselves, the jig is up.
Yeah, no, I agree. The school choice and vouchers and the whole lot of it is something I'm excited about, and getting rid of the Board of Education. And I love to hear people squeal about, kids being left behind and who's going to. The same people that shut the fucking schools for 2 years, right, by the way, are the ones who are so worried about the kids, And it just cracks me up. I love to see them get their panties in a bunch. And yeah, what happened is the colleges, I coined this phrase called crate training, which is you got to get them young. You can't. You can't.
Lennon said this.
You can't crate train a dog when it's 9 years old. You got to get them as a pup, and then they'll learn. And they figured out college is good for training, but they're kids like my son, who's 18, who thinks like I think, who's not going to be affected by college. But maybe if you could get hold of him when he was 7 and start poisoning his brain with your indoctrination bullshit, then he would, by the time he was 18, think like we want him to think. So it started as college, but it's now trickled all the way down to grade school because they figured out, let's just get him in the crate early.
And that's why they're so desperate to put measures to encourage children to tell things to teachers and not have the teachers tell the parents.
Right.
I'm from the Soviet Union. It's a very Soviet technique. It's a very effective technique. Create the trust relationship between the government agent and the child, and create a division between the child and his family. And once you have that kid for life, and you can make them hate dad. And that's why you vote Trump. You vote for Officer Harris, because dad likes Trump, and Trump reminds you of dad. And I'm going to show you dad. I'm going to vote for this, mongoloid.
Well, it's interesting. I think we got a clip that I've been sitting on for a little while. It was Chris Hayes. And he was talking. Yeah, I know. He's such an idiot. What's funny about these guys? They all carry themselves like such intellectuals when they're really just 10-cent heads.
Yeah, but Adam, it's a great feint.
Yeah, it is. And he was talking to Bill Maher about trans kids, and Bill Maher was starting to sound semi-normal. And we have it somewhere in our computer, but we're a little bit shorthanded today, so might take a second to find. But if you listen to him and how he sort of answers Bill Maher and the angles he works, it's interesting. It has a lot of sort of propaganda techniques in it. It kind of reminds me of like when people say, listen, I just think women should be allowed to make their own decisions about healthcare. You know what I mean? It's like, you and everyone else. Nobody's talking about that.
Are you familiar with the expression Mott and Bailey?
No, tell me.
So Mott and Bailey is a rhetorical technique. It's very disingenuous, where the Mott is like the field, the Bailey is the castle, right? So they'll say something that everyone agrees with, then say something controversial, then retreat to the first thing. For example, don't you agree, Adam, that women should have control of their bodies? Sure. Right. So abortion should be legal to 9 months. I didn't say that. Well, you just said women should. So it's the same thing with Don't you think kids who have mental issues should be treated and treated with respect? Absolutely. Right. So you agree, blah, 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 blah. So it's complete BS. And here's another thing that's really kind of insane. We've all heard these stories of like kids who are like locked in cages as a kid or raised by wolves. They tell you with a straight face, well, not with a straight face, they're lying. Oh, puberty blockers are reversible.
Right.
Like we know about gymnasts who like their growth is stunted because little girls or they get their menses much later. Oh, you could just pause it. So like I'm short and I'm gonna start growing again. All of a sudden my growth plates are gonna open up. It makes no sense. They know it makes no sense, and that's why at a certain point I think people realized these people are not negotiating in good faith. So there's no point even talking to them because they don't believe what they say even as they say it.
Well, here's Chris Hayes now. I don't know who's in charge of this clip, but I need to see you because I'm gonna start and stop you on this so you can listen to his interesting little techniques, and also Bill Maher and his stupid. I'll tell you what Bill Maher suffers from. He has a guy in the audience that gets the clap going real fast. And somebody says something sort of asinine, but it sounds good, like, listen, government, stay out of my bedroom. Guy just jumps on it all the time, and people clap. He's way too happy with the clappy, is what I want to say. All right, here's idiot Chris Hayes talking to Bill Maher about the transgender situation.
I don't think there's anyone who hasn't had a moment across the political spectrum of some form of progressive communication that's either left them bewildered or a little like, I don't know about that. But I also think at the same time, there is a message of what I would call like common sense, patriotic pluralism. Yeah. That is a majority message, which is like, if some father and mother have healthcare for their kid lined up who's trans, just stay the fuck out of their business.
Wow.
Like, and
the clapping.
All right, pause. I told you I was coming with the pause. It's health care for their child who is trans. So it's like saying, all right, the kid needs an appendectomy. Oh, no, he's trans. No, that's not what we're saying. We're saying don't cut his dick off at 12 years old. But he says health care, it's basically what you said. Don't you think trans kids should have access to health care? It's like, yeah, of course. Everyone thinks everyone should have access. But you're saying trans kids. We're talking about transing a kid using the health care.
His ears.
Says, yeah, he's talking. So run it. You can run it back 10 seconds, but listen to his bullshit claims. And then also the clappy guy thing. Like, stay out of their business.
Their kid lined up who's trans, just stay the fuck out of their business. Like, and let them make that decision. That's their decision to make. And you don't have to make that for your family. I'm not going to tell you what to do with your family.
But the argument is whether the child should make the decision.
But the child is never making the decision. The parents are always making the decision. Parents consent to medical care.
Well, here in California, you're allowed to hide it from the parents if the kid is.
Yes.
Thank you, one person who knows that.
But I mean,
somebody knows that is the case.
I think in the vast majority, and we've been hearing from parents right now whose kids' medical care has been interrupted. I think there's a way to talk about.
Well, of course, they would say it's not medical care. They would say it's disfiguring a child.
I think they should mind their own business. I really do. I think they should mind their own business.
Okay,
and I think that's true about a lot of things. I think.
Well, let him finish 1 second. All right, pause it. Yes, go ahead. Yeah, mind
Here's
your own
what
business.
I think. First of all, I think Chris Hayes probably is a trans kid because he looks like every gender simultaneously.
He does.
But, other than that, I really believe this. People who are arguing that kids can make informed decisions about their gender are one step away from saying kids can make informed decisions about their sex.
Yeah.
I think this is a very slippery slope because everyone listening to this knows that a lot of child abuse happens within families. And no one would argue, well, the dad's doing this to the kid, so stay out of it and mind your own business. No one would say that. But Chris is invoking that. It's very disingenuous and it's very dangerous. And this combined with how much child abuse is swept on the rug by the corporate press leaves me extremely uneasy.
He does look like every gender put together.
I thought that was Fat Ellen.
Yeah, he's like an everything bagel. All right. So, I don't know if he's Jewish or not. Don't get me wrong.
No. He's not. Chris. His name's Chris.
He continues. We continue with Chris Hayes which is a very interesting, another tactic, which is we're talking about something that is really controversial, which is transing an underage kid. And then at some point, he steers it back to something sort of inane and, you know, sort of benign, like, and they want, listen else what we want control of. And it's interesting. So it's that technique you kind of talk about where this is very damaging and very controversial. And then he picks something that nobody cares about and goes, why do they care so much? Like, nobody cares about that. All right, we'll play the rest of the Chris Hayes clip if we can find that. You can roll it back 10 seconds and we'll roll into. Listen to what his last point is. And then also realize these guys are professional sort of point makers, except for their points never hold water. And, you know, and then, and also you're losing the argument if you just say something like, hey, just mind your own business. Yeah, right.
They're not losing the argument. They're shutting down the argument.
Right.
It's an effective technique.
Tim Walz was telling everyone to mind their own business all the way on the campaign while he set up a snitch line for COVID people in Minnesota. So I don't know. Shall we mind our own business or shall we snitch on our neighbor's kid? All right, we'll play it. You have the clip, right? We don't have the clip. We had the clip, is what I would say, but it went somewhere.
We have to pull it back up.
Okay, well, probably don't get rid of it if we're just going to say we're stopping and, you know, going to continue on. We'll find it. Yeah, we're on a little
bit of a rainy day.
Rainy day. No one came in. I know we got people that don't normally do this doing it. But why get rid of the clip, I guess is what I'm saying. We're just stopping it. Here we go. We'll play it. We don't need to see it. You can just play it if you want.
I don't think there's anyone who hasn't had a moment across the political spectrum of some form of progressive communication that's either left them bewildered or a little like, I don't know about that. But I also think at the same time, there is a message of what I would call like common sense patriotic pluralism. Yeah. That is a majority message, which is like, if some father and mother have health care for their kid lined up who's trans, just stay the fuck out of their business. Like, and let them make that decision. That's their decision to make. And you don't have to make that for your family. I'm not going to tell you what to do with your family.
Well, I mean, but the argument is whether the child should make the decision.
But the child is never making the decision. The parents are always making the decision. Parents consent to medical care.
Well, here in California, you're allowed to hide it from the parents if the kid is.
Yes.
Thank you, one person who knows that.
But I mean,
somebody knows that is the case.
I think in the vast majority, and we've been hearing from parents right now whose kids' medical care has been interrupted. I think there's a way to talk about.
Well, of course, they would say it's not medical care. They would say it's disfiguring a child.
I think they should mind their own business. I really do. I think they should mind their own business. And I think that's true about a lot of things. I think there is this sense in which there was this sort of backlash politics, some of which I understood, some of which people I know felt that way. I don't think what people wanted was for the women CIA agents at the CIA to be told that they can't get together once a month to like celebrate former women spies.
All right, pause. No one gives a fuck about that. Nobody ever said anything about it. No one's thought about it. No one knew about it. You took trans and then you basically married it to something benign. You know, women CIA agents getting together for a reunion to talk about their experiences.
I think that's called a straw woman.
Yeah, nobody cares. There's not a human being I know on either side of the aisle who would have any thoughts about that.
I think the other thing is when Chris says, like, stay out of their business, all he's saying is he doesn't care. And when he says the kids are making these decisions for awfuls, affluent white female liberals, having a trans kid's like winning the lottery. They get huge status. Trans mom, I get to wear the shirt. It's like when the dad back in the day would have a football player, captain of the football team's son. It's the greatest thing that's ever happened to them. And so many women are being encouraged through society and everything out there, if they have a young gay boy, to try to transition him. Oh, look, he played with a doll. Let's get him on some estrogen.
Oh, wow. Yeah, no, it becomes a narcissistic endeavor. I know a person, I don't like them, but I know a person who has a trans kid, and this bitch brings it up every time you talk to her, even if you're just passing her in the hall. It's not like her kid's with her. For Christ's sake, I got kids. I never bring them up in front of her. And Cynthia Nixon the other day is up there screaming about, I have trans. Everyone I know is trans. My kids' friends are trans. And everyone's just clapping their ass off like she's some kind of hero for having fucked up kids or nieces or nephews or whatever it is. So it's all kind of all roads lead to narcissism is how I like to describe it.
Munchausen's
by proxy, yeah.
Yeah, we're there. All right, let's take a quick break. Michael, hang with us. We'll do a little news right after this. O'Reilly Auto Parts. Bam! You know the song, right? Mm-hmm. They're in the business of keeping your car on the road. O'Reilly Auto Parts offers friendly, helpful service and all the parts and knowledge you need to maintain and repair your automobile. Always been an O'Reilly guy. Used to go to the one out in North Hollywood when I was over there. Then I moved to La Crescenta. Went to the one up on Foothill. Still swing by there every once in a while because I'm a hands-on guy. So whether you're a car aficionado or an auto novice, you'll find the employees at O'Reilly Auto Parts are knowledgeable, helpful, and best off, they're friendly because some of those auto parts guys can be a little tough around the edges. Stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts today, or you can visit us at O'ReillyAuto.com/Adam. That's O'ReillyAuto.com/Adam. All right, let's do some news with Mayhem Miller.
Let's get after it. We did cover this earlier in the show, but here it is in black and white. In the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic, American students are grappling with significant learning deficits in both reading and mathematics.
Yeah, because it hurt kids because you threw them out of school for long periods of time. So I don't know what they thought. I don't know what they thought was going to happen to the kids once they either school's important or it's not. If it's not, fuck it. Good. We won't go.
Well, I'll let you know this. The average student is trailing by approximately half a grade level compared to pre-pandemic benchmarks. There is some, resilience shown in some schools in Compton, California. Targeted interventions such as in-class tutoring and data chats have yielded substantial academic gains. However, the trend is downward, half a grade.
Well, the thing that's weird about our government is we talk about removing something like Department of Education that is flawed and broken, and then they get outraged and go, "What are you talking about? You're going to throw away education?" And it's sort of like, yes, it doesn't work. If it's not effective, then it can't be both. It can't be ineffective and you're outraged that I want to remodel it. You know what I mean? I'm basically walking into a house where the toilet is always leaking on the bathroom floor, and then I go, I think we need to work on this toilet. Then you're outraged?
I think their answer is always more money, more money, more money. And if you say, okay, how much money? It's always going to be more. Well, I can't write the word more in a check. Like literally, what is the number? Where you come up with it? I don't know. We'll find it. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
Yeah, I agree. I like competition. Wherever you remove the competition, the product always suffers. And the public school system removes that. And then also they get to sort of do things by fiat, like they just announced there's no more school and there's nothing you can do about it if you live in Southern California. And my kids had to stay home for over a year. Like it screwed them up.
But in what other circumstance other than literal prison are you locked in a building with your violent tormentors with no recourse? And like I know some conservatives say that's a good lesson to learn. It's not. Because if I'm in an office and my coworker starts slamming me into the wall, the answer isn't, well, you're both at fault. Right. The answer is a lawsuit and I'm going to get rich and he's going to get fired. It's a very deranged lesson to teach, and it teaches kids to be fearful and obedient, which is not what you want to teach the citizens of a free country. You want them to be angry and you want them to be defiant.
What's your take on dismantling the Department of Education, and what should it be replaced with?
I'm in favor of dismantling Department of Education employees.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't know. Here's a metaphor, but all right. I open the fridge I had food left over from a party, and I wanted to feed my employees. And I hate it when people leave stuff open in the fridge and it gets dried out and goes bad. And I hate throwing away food, and I hate waste. So I took a bunch of time, and I undid the it was in a metal aluminum thing, and I had to pull like all the flaps and I set it on top, and I pushed them all back, and I crimped it all down, and it was all nice and sealed. And then I walked in this morning, and I looked at it, and the top was just sitting on it, sort of haphazard, but I could see a lot of daylight, and nobody had taken the time to put it back and seal it. And I thought to myself, I bet they'd do a better job if they were at home and that was their lasagna that was going south.
But Adam, this isn't the grapes of wrath. Like, lasagna's plentiful. Like, I'll be happy to send you a lasagna if you need a lasagna. This is like 1930s
You don't know where
talk.
he's from.
It's a metaphor for the difference between your stuff and other people's stuff. And people do a pretty good job with their stuff. Like Thomas Sowell will explain this to you. But when it comes to my stuff, and you already got your slice of lasagna, you're not going to take the time to put this lid back on correctly, which does take a couple of minutes. And then I realized, oh, that's essentially what we're talking about with government. Your money, the way you spend your money, you're pretty thoughtful about it. When it's just coming in, then why wouldn't the bureaucracy just keep growing? And who cares if you got another tutor who taught this and didn't care about that? And just the way the system works is, there used to be 2 office people for every 30 students, and now there's 40 office people for every 20 students, and it just keeps adding on because it's not their money. Is what I'm saying.
I don't care if it's wasteful if the kids actually learn skills and were developed into healthy adults. What I care about is how malevolent and depraved what they're being taught is and how screwed up the environment is. That's the big issue. It's not that we're spending the money. We can afford the money. And other countries, spend similar amounts or even less than us. But the point is we have it. What these kids are being turned into is the real issue here. I don't think there's any price that's too high if you're going to have a quality education system, because we're going to be the best country on earth, and you want a population that's informed and educated. The way they're doing it now, it's not the waste that's the issue. It's what they're doing effectively. That's the problem, in my opinion.
Well, no, you're right. And, 2 things can be right at once, which is not only are they fucking the kids up, but they want more money.
Right.
To do more of what they're doing. So I'm with you. I want a better outcome, but I also, in general, just don't like wasting taxpayer dollars. That it's not infinite. It could go to a park or a road.
I'm glad you mentioned waste, because in a significant development, the Department of Homeland Security announced the termination of 4 Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, employees for unauthorized payments totaling $59 million to New York City for migrant housing. The individuals dismissed include FEMA's chief financial officer, 2 program analysts, and a grant specialist.
Well, but I mean, really, how else would it go if you just had sort of unlimited money pouring in and allocated it however the fuck you wanted? It couldn't really go any other way. It's always funny when they go, Elon Musk, and you hear Liz Warren, you got some billionaire. It's like, I want the guy to be a billionaire. What I don't want is Hunter Biden and Joe Biden and Jim Biden and the rest of the Bidens trying to get by on $186K a year and needing to get supplemented from Ukraine. Like, I want someone who's independently wealthy making these decisions. Also, it is funny that billionaire in the last 10 minutes became a pejorative. It used to be bum. Now billionaires are pejorative. Like, they literally just go, this billionaire and his billionaire buddies. I'm like, when I was a kid, that was a good thing. That meant that guy was super smart.
Unless it's George Soros or Jeff Bezos. In which case we don't talk about them, right? The other thing that's crazy about what I was just saying earlier, $59 million is a drop in the bucket compared to the federal budget. If they had just pocketed that money, I'd prefer that they did that than shove all these migrants into New York with the consequences that we saw not that long ago.
Agreed. All right, what else you got, Mayhem?
Well, let's lighten it up a bit with company-sanctioned sex days proposed to boost productivity and employee well-being. I'll be putting in a notice for that later, Adam. In a groundbreaking move to enhance workplace productivity and employee satisfaction, some companies are considering offering sex days, paid time off dedicated to intimacy and sexual wellness. A recent study by Zip Health, an online pharmacy, surveyed 800 employees and 200 managers across various industries and age groups. The findings revealed that 50% of employees who took time off for sexual activities reported a noticeable increase in their work output upon returning. I mean, I read all that, and I definitely banged this morning.
Oh, you did?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, nice.
Feeling very relaxed, smooth.
I don't, to me, it's a sort of, look, you caught me on a bad day because I got a bunch of fucking people missing today. And it drives me nuts how casual everybody is with work. They're just sort of float in or they float out or they go, I got to cut out early or it's raining, so I got to leave early or I got to.
Different generation.
They schedule everything for work days. They go, I got a dentist appointment or I got to pick my in-laws up from the airport. It's like, don't do it in the middle of the day when you're supposed to be working. I had people that work for me be like, I'm going to be out a couple days. And I go, what are you doing? They go, I got to help my wife with her work. I was like, tell your wife you have a job as well. Yeah. Then there's
Adam.
Yes.
Don't you think maybe that was their euphemism for saying they're going to go on a bender with their wife?
Maybe it was a sex day. I'm just saying we have, like, if your cat dies, you can take a few grief days off now and all that. It's a slippery slope. There's like way too many guys are taking off days for the birth, they're taking off the paternity days as well, or the maternity days. Like, I don't want to sound
Adam,
like
you're
an
the
old
boss.
dick.
You're letting them.
Well, experts argue that.
Also, I don't know what to do. I just show up and I go, where's Byron? I go, he's not here. I go, where is he? He's at the dentist. I go, okay.
The experts argue that embracing sexual wellness could redefine workplace wellness programs, leading to improved mental health and reduced stigma. As companies explore innovative ways to support their employees, sex days may become part of the evolving landscape of workplace benefits.
This is going to lead to increased self-harm because everyone who shows up to work, they're incels. So they're going to be looking around and knowing who's getting laid and who's not, and it's going to be very, very dark.
Yeah, and it's going to take a new sort of twist. Yeah, because like Bert hasn't missed a day in 4 years. Like, yeah, sad, super sad. Because we used to hold them up as beacons of virtue. Now they're just guys who can't get laid.
Didn't use any of his sex days.
Yeah, and also we start accusing them of spending a little too much time in the men's room. Like, what are we doing in there, Bert? Why do you have to lock the door? I don't get it. I just want to use the urinal next to the commode. We had to lock the door behind you? That's interesting. You got a little sweat on your brow there, Bert. You okay? Yeah. Haven't missed a day. Jeez, I've been here for 4 years. I don't think you've ever missed a day.
Or it could be, Jane, your cell phone keeps going off. I keep even humming it on your desk. Why don't you just turn it on to mute?
Yeah. I don't know. I come from construction. You showed up, you got paid, or you didn't show up and you didn't get paid. And it kept everyone. I've talked to Dr. Drew about this. You know what kept everyone in line? Time cards.
Yeah.
You'd come in, you'd punch the thing, and then you'd have to punch out for lunch. And by the way, if you could take an hour and a half lunch, but you got to punch in, you got to come in, and then you could leave early, but you got to punch out. Time cards sort of were the great sort of created the guardrails and the barriers are like the great sort of leveler of life. Like the time card just kept everyone in check because you couldn't really work around it. Every once in a while, someone would try to convince somebody to punch in for them, when they got, but see, I wish I had time cards. I'm telling you, look, we're complaining. I'm complaining as much as I want to complain about schools and school closures and unions and stuff like that. If we told every one of these fucking teachers, you can stay home as much as you want, you're not getting paid. You got to go to work to get paid. If you want to stay home and educate or whatever, that's fine. But you do it on your dime. We're not paying you. then it would have solved the problem. If the LA Unified school teachers had a time clock and a punch card, and no one would go, oh, we're going to take a year and a half off.
Right.
And we go home and get paid, and I'll work out of my bathrobe and Hello Kitty slippers. It makes people do the wrong thing. It's sad, but it's no different than what we're just talking about with Doge and everything else. It's just tons of money, no accountability, and it goes south almost immediately.
That was one of the things Trump did on day one, I think, where he eliminated a lot of these jobs were remote working. He's like, you go in the office. I don't want to hear it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, because people were, I don't know, they were averaging like 2 days a month or something, like the federal people. Look, I never miss a day of work because I don't get paid if I don't go to work. So I don't need a time clock because gravity keeps me in line. There's no such thing as canceling a show because I can cancel a show. I just don't get paid.
Yeah.
So I'm fine. And by the way, magically and mysteriously never miss any work because I'm kept in line by this sort of gravity that I have to live with on a daily basis. But if you take everyone and you just tell school teachers you want to come in or you don't want to come in, you want to get paid, but you can get paid if you go home, then magically they'll vote to go home, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, you think lasagna's cheap?
Yeah, that's right. And I get the dried lasagna even though I paid for the lasagna. All right, let's give Michael a plug. The podcast, You're Welcome, with Michael Malice, can be found anywhere you find finer podcasts.
Yeah.
Which is a vestige of my past, but I'm going to say that. Where else? What else can I do, Mike? Where else can we send people for you?
Anyway, twitter.com, Michael Malice. I have a pretty big audience there. This has just been a great hoot. I've been a big admirer of yours for a long time. So a lot of people have been yelling at you for a long time to have me on the show. So I'm glad it finally happened.
Well, you can come back anytime, and I'd be happy to come onto your podcast.
Oh, I would love that. I'll follow up with Daphne.
Please follow up with Daphne because I'd love to be a guest on your show as well.
Oh, hell yeah.
Thanks.
Awesome.
Thanks,
Take care,
Michael.
guys. I really enjoyed it.
Appreciate it. All right. I am not going to be at the first thing that's on my events thing because the guy who does that is not here today, so we didn't have that thing worked out. But I'm going to San Luis Obispo, and I'm going to Monterey, and I'm going to Napa, if I can read that from here, coming up at the end of the month. You can go to adamcarolla.com for all the live shows. Until next time, it's Adam Carolla for Drake Bell and Michael Malice and Mayhem saying mahalo.